Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today on the Pro Strategy Business Performance Management webinar series. Today, I'd like to thank Tim O'Leary and Lorcan Sherlock from BWG Foods who are joining us. And Tim and Lorcan are going to tell us about their experience of using IBM Planning Analytics, or IBM TM1, as is currently known, to automate their budgeting and forecasting processes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start presenting my screen, and I am going to hand you over to Tim, and Tim will take you through, first of all, an overview of the BWG Foods business, describing their go-to-market, or their key markets, and their position in the Irish grocery market. And Lorcan is then going to tell you about their budgeting and reporting process, some of the challenges that they led them to selecting a BPM tool to help them with their day-to-day processes, and describe the benefits that they have achieved from that. So before we kick into Tim's presentation, just maybe, Aileen, if you're on the line, confirm that you can see the screen and you can hear us clearly.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly, and we've full vision of the screen. It's all good to go, Sean.
Great, thank you very much, Aileen. Okay, Tim. Okay. Yeah, so maybe Tim, you can take us through your slides and tell us a little bit about the BWG Foods business.
Okay, thanks, Sean. As mentioned, my name is Tim O'Leary, and I'm the MIS manager with BWG Foods. So today we're going to take you through BWG's journey with Pro Strategy and with Cognos TM1. So I'm going to start just by giving you a background as to who we are. So a lot of you may not have heard of BWG Foods, but I'm sure you've heard of many of our brands, especially the better known ones like Spar, Mace, and Londis. So the screen there just moves on. Yeah, sorry. So some of our lesser known brands that you may not be familiar with would be Value Centre, which comprises of 22 cash and carries. We have BWG Food Service, which serves the hospitality sector, and we have Appleby Westward, which has the Spar franchise for the southwest of England. So just moving on to give you a flavour for the Irish grocery market, there is no kind of definitive published data on the market, but if we, sorry, just skip one slide there. Just a background on the size of BWG. We have a turnover of 1.4 billion as per our last financial year, which was September 19. That was a growth of about 6.5% over the previous year, and we have nearly 1,600 employees as well today. So moving on to the Irish grocery market, there's no definitive published data, but AC Nielsen estimate that the market is worth about 17.6 billion in 2019. And this slide is interesting in that you can see when the recession hit in 2008, and it took about 10 years before we got back up to pre-recession levels. Now, thankfully, from 2016 up to date, we've seen steady growth again. So the market is back in growth, which is good for everyone. So if we to look at our share of the grocery market, we estimate that we are 12.2% of the market. That again is using AC Nielsen data. Musgraves, which comprise of SuperValu and Centra, they're the market leader with over 25%. Duns and Tesco are pretty similar. Aldi and Lidl are now up to about 21%. And the others would be made up of independents and forecourts like Circle K and Applegreen. Now, from time to time you hear reports on the radio of who the market leader is, and you hear numbers that Duns have maybe 24%, etc. And if you're just wondering why my numbers are different, is what you hear on the radio is typically Kantar published numbers, and what they don't take into account is food consumed on the premises. So they only take account of food that is brought home. So again, they're not capturing the full market, and this is a better picture of the market as a whole. So we believe we are the largest operator in the convenience sector. So if we look at the actual numbers of convenience stores in the market, we have about 40% of that total number of stores. So we're well ahead of Musgraves, who would be next. Then we have Circle K, which are the former Topaz brand. You have Gala, you have Barry's, which is the cost cutter brand, and others then would be just smaller symbols, and Apple Green would be included in there as well. So just moving on to how we operate, we like to grow by acquisition, and while that's good from a P&L point of view, it makes our lives a bit difficult in compiling reports and doing budgets, because we never have a similar year on year. There's always something new, and you're trying to compare different numbers. So as I say, while it's good for the P&L, it's difficult from a planning and reporting point of view. But some of our recent acquisitions, we bought Landis in June 15, and that was about 136 stores. We acquired Four Aces in 2018, which comprised of 2 cash and carries and 36 Gala stores. We acquired Card Foods in November 18, and that serves the hospitality sector primarily with poultry products. And just this month, we've acquired Heaney Meats, which again serve the hospitality sector, and it's high-end red meat products.
So maybe, Tim, just to kind of focus on that, because I'm sure anyone who's been involved in a business where there's been acquisition, it generally presents challenges of integrating data and integrating your reporting and planning processes. So did you find that having the TM1 system in place was able to help with the managing those acquisitions in terms of bringing those into your business and your reporting processes, and kind of help your role as the MIS manager?
Oh yeah, definitely, because again, there are times when you want to see real like-for-like growth. So we say when we acquired Landis in 15, by the time we went into 16, then we would have had a full year of sales. And if you're comparing it with, we'd say, going back to June, where it's a half year of sales, we were able to bring in like kind of pre-act sales. Yep. So we'd have true growth in terms of BWG Foods, but we'd also be able to see like-for-like growth in terms of how the brand is performing, even though we didn't own Landis at the time. So it is a big help from that type of stuff. We have indicators that allow you do pre and post AC and stuff like that. So it is very helpful from that.
And it's probably also fair to say that, with that growing estate that you're providing data for, you were able to do that without adding headcounts. So you're able to.
Oh no, 100%. All of those acquisitions, we haven't grown anyone in MIS or in the wider finance department. So the thing is pretty seamless. Once you get it up and running, most of the reports become automated. You don't need extra people to deal with extra volume. So from that point of view, yeah, it has helped with that.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Okay, so if we just look at how we split our business, we have a retail division with a managing director, and we have a wholesale division also with a managing director. So they are 2 distinct businesses. So if we start with retail division and how we operate, we have 4 distribution channels. So our first channel there is our national distribution centre in Kilcarbery, which is a 270,000 square foot premises. It delivers chill and ambient product, and we do about 22 million cases a year out of that depot. The second channel there is central billing, and this is where suppliers deliver direct to our retail stores, but they invoice BWG, and we in turn invoice our retailers. We then have BWG Wines and Spirits, which is our alcohol division. And the final one there is BWG Value Centre, which is actually our wholesale division, but our retail estate can order off them. So it's a bit complicated, but they are the 4 channels that we distribute to our retail estate. So moving on then to our wholesale division, it comprises of 22 cash and carry branches. They go from Killarney up to Letterkenny and a lot of places in between. And again, even these vary greatly. So the smallest branch would have a turnover of 4 million, up to our biggest branch in Dublin, which is a turnover of 57 million. They serve about 5,000 customers, and we deliver about 18 million cases annually. So that's a kind of background to the grocery market and to BWG Foods.
What will probably help the audience, Tim, is internally, these are two very distinct divisions within BWG Foods. I guess how performance is measured, how people are incentivized. They are, so the reporting that they want, the profitability metrics that they're looking at, they are different across the retail and wholesale divisions. You have different customers for data internally.
Yeah, that's correct, Sean. Like the retail division is basically the Spar, Landis, Mace, and all of those guys will want reports in a specific way. But when we look at the wholesale division, that has the cash and carries that have different departments, different product mixes. We also have our food service businesses like Corrib and Heaney Meats. Again, they're totally different businesses. They're not retail. They're selling to small customers, hospitality customers. They have different product categories. They have different ways of measuring profit and of reporting sales. So yeah, we do have kind of two distinct businesses, and like obviously TM1 has to cater for both, and it does.
Yeah, and I think, look, the reason why I kind of zoned in on that now, Tim, is I think as Lorcan moves into talking about how the solution works, that was probably an important consideration for you, that you had to serve different audiences within the BWG business, and it had to work for both of those audiences. And they're not actually 100% discrete. Some of your retail customers trade with the wholesale division, and vice versa. So that's some of the business challenges you have to deal with.
And even though they might want distinct reporting, we obviously have to roll up to a consolidated report and budget at some point. So obviously we needed something that had the capability to do two different businesses, but then was able to consolidate them back into something meaningful for an overall company budget or company sales report.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Tim.
Cheers.
Okay, so just introducing Lorcan Sherlock. So Lorcan is now going to tell you about, I guess, the day-to-day pain points that the MIS team experience with trying to execute, I guess, their planning and reporting processes in a manual way. So over to you, Lorcan.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lorcan Sherlock. I'm a management accountant at BWG Foods, and I'm the person mainly responsible for managing the budget process. So to start out, we'll just talk about some of the things that led us to using TM1. So starting off with the planning process. So we have various silos of data, a lot of different models, a lot of different sales areas which we have to bring into one model. I think the guys already alluded to that with the wholesale and the retail groups. But within those, we also have a lot of different subgroups. We have symbols in retail and symbols in wholesale. We have a food service group underneath that, which cuts across all channels and across both groups. In addition to that, when you're bringing a lot of things like this together, and if you're doing it manually or if you're doing it in spreadsheets, it can be really difficult to keep all of that data consistent and coherent. So I think TM1 really helped with that. We have a key man dependency. So for a long time, I was basically the person who did the entire budget process.
The BWG planning tool?
Yeah, so that was me, which is a problem. If I were out sick or if I were tied up in one area, there wouldn't be someone who could really step into the process or enter one area of the process to help out. And then just a lack of process. A lot of things were done in an ad hoc way. Things change so much that year to year things change. It was inconsistent from one year to the next, so it was really difficult to put a process around the way we budgeted. In terms of reporting, we had a really long reporting process. When I first started, it took us about 4 days to complete our reporting cycle. So there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of things done manually, a lot of things in Excel. And as all of you know, when you do things that way, there's a lot more room for error as well. Mistakes can be made. There's a lot more opportunity for So we've got it down to about, I'd say, a couple hours now, and the reports are a lot more accurate. It's a lot more automated, a lot more systematic. There's a process around.
I think it's probably worth, pointing out at this point, some people think that can be a very difficult thing to achieve, and typically it's not. A lot of people spend time today, or at least a lot of the customers that we go and talk to, downloading data from their general ledger, building pivot tables, and manipulating data in Excel, producing reports. And some of those things, just those manual processes, take a lot of time in terms of validating data. Is there new accounts that should fit into a roll up that have are new this month, etc. And that takes time. Really, what we achieved here was we built an integration to the BWG Foods general ledger system, which was Coda. Automated that interface so that that's a monthly process that can effectively be run on demand or on a schedule, and then built the reporting hierarchies into their dimensions. And that's effectively it. That's the source from reporting. Once the reports are written once, they can be just rerun each month. It's a quick win, I guess, is probably the best way of describing it.
Yeah.
But apart from just our nominal ledger, Sean, we also interact with the ERP system, which gets the granular level of detail.
Yeah.
And again, that is the power of it.
Yeah.
That is interacting with nominal ledger and ERP.
Yeah.
Okay, so our budget process, it involves a lot of people. So we have 22 value center managers, 5 retail symbol managers, that would be the SPAR, the Excel, the MACE that Tim referred to earlier, 2 wholesale symbol managers, Excel and Gala, food service manager. And then on top of that, for overheads, we have about 20 people involved in providing data. And just to keep in mind, with all of those people, that comes with all the overlaps and all the different ways they present the data, different ways they want their data to end up coming out and be reported to them. So they all have different needs. So typical pain points, anyone who's done a budget knows that there are always going to be loads of versions. And so for me, after a big sales week, someone might want to redo the forecast, and so you have to get all your data, pull all your data out, send it all out again, get all the new data back, and create a new version. That's really time consuming. So TM1 has really helped us cut down on that, the time spent doing that. It's a much quicker process. It's much easier. Applying profiles to disaggregate data. So with all of these people, with all of these budget holders, they give us their data in different ways. We need to split it. We end up needing to split this data into much smaller pieces, into different departments, into different depots, and so doing that in spreadsheets again is really difficult. So TM1 has helped us with that process. Managing overlap, you can see the Venn diagram on the right. This would be a really big deal for us because we would have a lot of overlap with all the sales given to us from all of these different groups. So you can see we might have a 5% increase in budget from the wholesale group and a 5% increase from the retail group, which doesn't necessarily translate into a 5% increase overall because there's an overlap in this increase, and the increase might occur mostly in the retail sales that go through the wholesale channel, so it might only equate to a 2% increase. And it's really important to us that we know about things like this very quickly, because upper management might be thinking, oh, a 5% increase from wholesale and a 5% increase in retail, we're doing really well. But when they see a 2% increase come back, we don't want to surprise them with issues like that. That can be a problem. So processing budget data and preparing senior management reports. It's really important to get this stuff out quickly to them so they can see where we are in the process and see what changes they need or what adjustments they're going to need to make or what they're going to need to do to reach their overall goals, their top level budget goals. So we now have reports in place that pull directly from TM1, and we can get an update at any time of where we are in the process, which is really helpful to keep people updated and informed about where we are. So for business complexity, I guess the point here really is that we have a lot of data. So you can see there ultimately we end up with over 70 million pieces of data. So typically, say for a typical SPAR store, we'd start with one piece of data. We'd get their overall yearly sales figure. We break that into 25 departments, usually for a SPAR store around 9 depots, 52 weeks, and then whether it's food service or not. So one piece of data turns into about 25,000 pieces of data. So with that in mind as well, we're breaking that down in a way that's different for each stakeholder. So certain budget holders would only be interested in the top line sales figures. Other ones would be really interested in which depots their sales are going through. So we break it down for different people in different ways. A SPAR store would mostly be done on profiles. So we profile their weeks, we profile their departments, we profile their depots. For an Excel store, they're really interested in the channel. So they provide their budget by channel, and then we break it down from that point. So we kind of have a different starting point for each of these groups. So it's fairly complex, and we end up with a lot of data. So what we wanted to achieve, I think this is probably true for a lot of organizations. We want it to be a more data-driven organization. We wanted, and going hand in hand with that, like we wanted one version of the truth. We can't have multiple different versions going around and people disagreeing on what the figures actually are. We wanted automation of reporting. So we wanted good data, and we wanted it more quickly. And we wanted all of this to be much more process driven for a number of reasons. That's for key man dependency, so people can jump in on a process. So it's more accurate, so we can find out if there's an issue somewhere, we know exactly where to go. So that's.
And I think maybe as part of the process, one of the things we were discussing earlier, Lorcan, is you probably wanted to pull some time back out of your annual budgeting cycle, so kind of reducing the amount of time from start to finish.
Yeah, and when I first started, it was a really long process. I'd say it was somewhere between 3.5 and 4 months typically. We spent on the budgeting process, and now we typically spend now we spend 2 months on it.
Yeah. Okay. So significant pare back, almost 100% in terms of the time that goes into your budget cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. So
this is just and Sean prepared this. This is just a flow chart of our data flow, how data flows through our budget process. And I don't think there's really need to go through this, but just to illustrate kind of the complexity of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, look, for anyone here, this is really, I suppose what the budgeting and planning tool is effectively, it models the business. So here the process flows that are symbolized here reflect, on the left hand side, the blue reflects the retail model, and on the right hand side, the grey reflects the wholesale division model. Look, I don't think it's going to be of a lot of interest for anyone to go into it in detail. It just basically describes that what we've done is created a data model that maps the BWG business.
But I think, Sean, just that green cloud at the top is just important, just to refer back to what Lorcan said. So that takes, you see, the sales from wholesale and the retail, and it eliminates the duplication. So it recognizes the SPAR sales that are in the wholesale but are also in the retail already. Yeah. And that's what's good about it. So
we have that information quickly.
Exactly.
You have it quickly, and I guess probably the other thing that's important is it's, the cloud is probably not the best symbol there because it suggests that there's some magic happening. There's not. It's a fully reconcilable and auditable process. You can go and see where those, how or trace the calculations and see where with the logic that drove that. So there is no magic to it. It's just a fully traceable and auditable process.
But even while there's no magic, though, it is still vital that it's done seamlessly and that we have an answer that doesn't duplicate sales. So.
Yeah, I mean, really, what Tim mentioned, what Tim and Sean were talking about earlier with the two parts of the business, the retail and wholesale, they both view the business in very different ways. And what this allows us to do is take those different views of the business and combine them in a way that's consistent. So we can look at our entire budget in a really in a consistent way and slice all the data up in a really consistent way.
Yeah, that's it.
This would be our planning application. So this is really important for us. For one thing, it's when you're outside of the planning cycle, it gives us a good way of re-entering and thinking about it again because it brings us through our entire process. Looking at it now, you can see the different steps involved in what we're doing. But the other thing is it really helps with key man dependency. So if Tim has something, a few years back, Tim wasn't really involved in the budget process at all. He's much more involved now, and he can jump in at any point. If he wants to look at something with LTA or the margin, he can just go in here and he knows where to go and how to enter the information there.
But the other good thing about it, it's practically done in a chronological order. So again,
it's a workflow.
Yeah, it is a workflow. So you, like if Lorcan happened to be gone on holidays, I'd say, well, where are you at? Right, I'm at the depot mix. I've that done. So then I know, right, we're on step 5. You know, that's what needs to be done next. And like by going into it, you can see what has to be done. Whereas before we had an application like this, it was Lorcan using an older version of Cognos, but it was all
trying to find the cubes,
and you were developing kind of stuff on the fly, really, like, you know, and I didn't know how to do it. Whereas at least here, it's very prescriptive. You're on level 5, you go in, it tells you what to do, and basically when you get that done, you go on to 6 and so on. And it's much better from eliminating a key man dependency. And as Lorcan says, when you get a budget finished, it's probably 8 to 10 months before you go back to do the next one, and you're expected to pick it up straight away. So it does help you, right, well, what do I need to do?
Yeah, reorient yourself a bit. Okay, so reporting. So this is a really big. This is where our time saving comes from with reporting. Is the automation of it. So there'd be a direct connection with our financial systems. The data is imported directly into TM1, and then we can. Typically, what we do then is send it out on spreadsheets to the various people in the company. But it's something that happens automatically. The other thing about it is because it happens automatically, it's pretty much removed errors from the process.
And probably, Lorcan, you know, some of the things that you take for granted with it, you know, in here it's very easy to you integrate data from different sources. So you have actual data, you can have planned data, you can have automatic variance reporting. You can have aggregated sales data from the general ledger with the detail behind it from the ERP system, which is it Accord?
Yeah, it's Accord. Yeah.
So the ability to provide both detailed and summary and variance information in your reports, that's something that's pretty painful in Excel. So it makes life easy from that context.
Yeah. And just for some context here, about 10 years ago when I first started, this was a really long and time-consuming process. We had 6 people in the department, and it took us. It makes it sound so. It took us days to do it.
Yeah.
And we do the reports in Excel. We print them up, and then we go and hand deliver them into mailboxes. So we've come a long way since then.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe just to talk through some of the benefits that you've, the quantifiable benefits, I guess, as well as there's probably some softer benefits in terms of quality of life and, avoiding the frustration with the old reporting process, but maybe focus on some of the quantifiable ones first.
Okay, well, just looking at the slide there, we did save 2 to 3 people. I mean, there are 2 or 3 people less, but even since then, we're now doing, Lorcan is our GDPR officer. We have CCPC legislation that we have to deal with. It resides within our department. LTA accounting and rebates to our retailers has now come into our department. When Lorcan was talking about 5 or 6 people, none of that existed.
So you've taken on additional responsibility.
We've less people and we have a lot more work. And we typically don't have to stay late, which is great as well. So there is no doubt, like that isn't just put up there just to have a good number on the slide. It is real. It's real benefit. The key man dependencies we spoke of, because we got a process-driven one. The long hours are gone, better processes. And again, and Laura can talk about this more than I can, but the fact that we've had a South African owner that took over in 2014, and they changed our year end from December to September. I've already shown that we've had 4 acquisitions. We had a change of nominal ledger software as well at the time, and has been able to deal with all of that.
Even accounting rule changes, like with the way income is dealt with, or the way that leases are dealt with. It's all really much more easy.
That's correct, yeah.
Much easier to deal with.
Yeah, because there was an accounting change where collection income had to move from overheads back into margin, but you just realign where it sits on the reporting hierarchy, and that moves. So it is.
It would have been a nightmare before to do that.
Yeah, it is able to handle a lot of different things. We have 53-week years versus 52-week years, all that sort of carry on. We're able to deal with.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks for that, Tim and Larkin. So maybe at this point, what we'll do is open the floor to some questions. If anyone in the audience has some questions that they'd like to put to Tim, Larkin, or I, we'd be glad to take them now. So just give me a second and I'll unmute everyone. Okay, so is there anyone who'd like to pose a question to Tim, Larkin, or I about their experience with the IBM Cognos tool in BWG? So maybe while the floor is open there, maybe Larkin, you can tell us a little bit about some of the things that are still on your to-do list.
Yeah, possible things we might be doing in the future. I think more direct involvement by the budget holders. So possibly we could give them a bit more responsibility in terms of what they want their department mix to look like, or what they want their depot profile to look like, how they want their budget phased. So the responsibility for all those things currently lies with us. It's determined centrally. To make the budget holders feel that the budget is a bit more theirs, to make them own it a bit more, or have them own it a bit more, maybe we could give them a bit more responsibility in what they control in the process.
And I think, Larkin, we give them the ability to input themselves. So again, take some of the onerous task off us.
Yeah.
Again, it's not difficult to do. So it's just about us getting the time to implement it with them and let a lot of the guys input their own data as opposed to giving us the data to input. I think that's where we need to go with it next.
Okay. And in terms of what you have done to date, or would you like to do, is the ability to do what-if scenarios and kind of pose the output of different scenarios. Is that something you do today, or would like to do more of? Something we see a lot with people asking us about the capability to do it now.
So we'd use the sandbox a good bit to test different scenarios, and I suppose it's a normal part of the budget process is looking at different scenarios and seeing how it affects the overall picture. So we do it a lot with these scenarios, and if something works or if something likes it, we can commit it to the actual budget.
Yeah, and report that as another version.
Yeah.
So it's something you're already doing.
Yeah, and I suppose going on, Sean, even trying to do a rolling forecast or stuff like that, it's something that we want to do. We're not using enough of it, so we may need to talk to you about getting a better benefit out of that in terms of using the data to date to predict. And again, we maybe want to interact by putting in some variables, but we want TM1 to then spit out the forecast. So we want to build a model where you'll put in a few inputs like for like growth and whatever, but let the model do it. We don't want to have to be interacting with Excel and taking it out there and doing it ourselves. Have a few variables, input your variables, and let TM1 run the process and forecast for you.
The way we'd use forecasting as part of our budget process. So once the budget process is finished, all of our forecasting is done outside.
Exactly, and that's something we probably need to look at, Larkin, and that we get a benefit out of TM1 by doing it.
Okay, very good. Okay, look, I think that probably wraps up our webinar for today. So I would first of all like to thank Tim and Larkin for giving their time to tell the story to everyone today, and to everyone who took the time to join our webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you very much, and we'll close the line at that.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Tim, Larkin.
Thanks, Ellen.